this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got a packed program for you today. In just a little bit, our Sandra Sanchez is going to be joining us to lead a conversation with the co-author of a new report titled, "What About My Children? Family Separation Among Parents Deported to Honduras." Dr. Michele Heisler, she's the medical director for Physicians for Human Rights and a professor at the University of Michigan. So we're looking forward to that conversation in just a little bit. But first, as always, we're going to start today by taking a look at what's trending across the border. Starting with a 19-year-old from Mexico died at a Florida ICE detention center earlier this week, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials said. Now, according to a news release provided by ICE, Royer Perez Jimenez was found unconscious and unresponsive at Glades County Detention Center around 2:30 Monday morning. The facility is halfway between Fort Myers and West Palm Beach, Florida. ICE staff says staff started CPR before two medical professionals arrived a few minutes later and determined that Perez Jimenez did not have a pulse. ICE says he took his own life, but the official cause of death is still under investigation. He had been in ICE custody since mid-February. A young man from Venezuela who spent 10 months in federal custody is now free. Dylan Contreras, a 20-year-old who was seeking asylum from Venezuela, was the first New York City high school student detained by ICE last year. He spoke out on Thursday after his release. Contreras expressed gratitude to everyone who helped secure his release.
I want to thank all New York City, every single person that has stepped up, held my hand throughout all this.
Contreras was released from a facility in Pennsylvania after being detained during an immigration hearing last May while going through the legal process of seeking asylum. The Department of Homeland Security said Contreras illegally entered the United States from Venezuela during the Biden administration and that he had been encountered at the border and released into the country. Also released from ICE custody, a reporter for a Spanish-language news outlet in Tennessee who contends she was wrongfully held in a detention center for more than 2 weeks. Stephanie Rodriguez Flores was in ICE custody after her arrest on March 4th during a traffic stop. She's a reporter for Nashville Noticias who has done stories critical of ICE. Her attorney says she was released Thursday after paying a bond recently allowed by a judge. An immigration judge has denied the asylum claim of the family of Liam Conejo Ramos. He is the 5-year-old boy photographed in a bunny hat and Spider-Man backpack as he was detained with his father during the immigration crackdown that shook Minneapolis earlier this year. A family lawyer said the family had been ordered to deport to Ecuador. The boy and his father, Adrian Conejo Arias, who is from Ecuador, were taken into custody in a Minneapolis suburb on January 20th and held for 10 days in a Texas detention center before a judge ordered them released. The family's lawyers are appealing the ruling. In Starr County, in the southernmost part of Texas, a popular birding spot near the Rio Grande has closed for the season, but it's unsure if they'll be able to reopen next fall. Sandra Sanchez visited the preserve to find out why.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife caretakers Bob and Kate Bowman are cleaning up and packing up after a busy 5 months that drew a lot of nature lovers and some rare birds here to this rural spot in far western Starr County on the border with Mexico.
It was a significant season in a lot of ways. We had a lot of visitors from all over the country and all over the world.
They had over 2,000 visitors and ID'd 116 species of birds, including Audubon's oriole, green jays, and a rare brown jay, one of only a handful ever seen in the U.S.
When the brown jay came, a lot of people came to see it, and it was a lifer. And many more that came to visit us had seen it here before. 13 years it didn't come, but they came back to see it in this spot again.
That might not happen anymore if they don't reopen in November.
If they're actually doing construction on the border wall along our back line, it would be hard to imagine how we could be open.
Maps on the U.S. Customs and Border Protection website show what they call new smart wall to be put up through this area, but nobody knows where.
This is the eastern corner of the property. They don't know who owns the land next to it. It's uncertain where the wall would go, but it likely would go through this spot.
This area that we're talking about where, would be a possible place where the wall would go through It's kind of a straight shot from where the wall is there and where the wall is upriver.
They can hear the wall being built outside Roma.
Even that is distracting, half-mile away. If it was, bulldozers and gravel trucks coming, right behind our garden here, it would be hard to imagine how we could welcome guests here.
He says construction would clear out critical bird habitat, and he worries how animals would be affected if DHS put buoys in the Rio Grande.
We don't know what the plans are.
Congress approved $46 billion for new border wall and river buoys paid for by the Big Beautiful Bill. Lawmakers previously had exempted the Salinenyo Wildlife Preserve from border wall, but this bill made no exceptions. We've asked DHS if the wall will run through here, but they have not responded. Deborah Lee Rodriguez, who runs Valley Land Fund, which owns the 2-acre preserve, says federal officials tried to survey the land last year, but
we denied access to the surveyor. I have not seen updated mapping to tell me specifically if any wall would go through our property.
This family says they often fish on the Rio Grande just outside the wildlife preserve. They catch white bass and catfish. There's even alligators here, but they worry they won't be able to if this is behind the wall. The Bowmans plan on leaving in the next few days once they get everything packed up and find homes for this abandoned German Shepherd who gave birth to 8 pups who have been wandering the preserve since January.
And here to talk more about this story and a little bit more about those pups that are just absolutely gorgeous, Sandra Sanchez. What else can you tell us about this?
Yeah, this is a very popular birding spot. It's a very rural area. We've talked about it before. We've been there. I've been there at least 2-3 times a year, right overlooking Ciudad Mier in Mexico, right there, right as you approach Zapata County. And, it's very possible if this wall is put up and they don't put a gate, this area will be inaccessible. People come here from all over the world. Unfortunately, some people also come to dump their animals, as happened with this pregnant German Shepherd mama who gave birth, they think, November, and they saw her in January. She's actually been living on the preserve and, feeding her dogs herself. And, they have since started to care for them. But the caretakers who are retirees who don't get paid don't want to leave until they can find someone to adopt the dogs, one or all of them. And they're desperate for an animal rescue, a shelter, individuals. So there is a link to their Salinenyo Facebook page on our borderreport.com story. If you're interested or you know someone, I saw the dogs. They're great, and I'm a dog lover. And, if you can help, go to the story and see what you can do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for reporting on that. You, however, are going to be introducing our guest for today's program.
We are.
So let's go ahead and bring her in now, Dr. Michele Heisler, Medical Director for Physicians for Human Rights. Thanks for joining us today, Doc.
To see you. Hello.
Thanks for being with us. Dr. Heisler, your report you co-authored with the Physicians for Human Rights released on Thursday. Really interesting, shows how family separation is affecting families, communities, gives a big perspective. Released also by the Women's Refugee Committee and your group. And tell us, how did you gather this information? What did you do? Where did you go? And over what time period?
Yes. So at the end of November, 3 of us researchers went to San Pedro Sula in Honduras. We had been given permission to actually go to the official welcome reception centers that had been set up. And we initially went because, as you know, independent monitors are not being given access to ICE detention centers. We're really not able to observe, and we were very concerned about the medical care. We initially were very focused on the medical care that detained pregnant mothers and postpartum mothers were receiving. So we initially went to Honduras in the hopes that as people were arriving, at the time we went, 300 people were being deported a day. We were at the centers right next to where the flights were coming in. And at that time, we had not anticipated that we would be, in fact, meeting and hearing about so many parents who had not even been asked if they had children. They had not been asked if they had children. They had not been given the opportunity to find their children and bring them with them to be deported. That is not something that we had been aware was happening. It was not something we had seen reported. ICE's own directives do say that you should always, one, ask people if they have children, two, give them the choice to decide what they want to happen with their children. Do they want to bring them with them? If they are going to stay in the U.S., are they in a safe environment? And so that is why in this report, we ended up talking to mothers, largely mothers, a couple of fathers. We talked to psychologists and physicians and social workers who were at the two reception centers where we were, and we had the chance to hear the stories of these parents.
Now, just to go back a little bit on that, I did look up ICE's directive, their policy on what they're supposed to do when they arrest someone, and it says, quote, "It is ICE's policy to ensure the agency's enforcement actions do not unnecessarily infringe upon the legal parental or guardianship rights and obligations of covered individuals who are primary caretakers of minor children in the U.S. and or those who have a direct interest in family or probate court, guardianship, or child welfare proceedings involving a minor child." So you're saying they weren't asking the people, do you have children? Do you need to contact someone? They were not following this directive.
That's correct. We did in-depth interviews with about 30 parents, and of those 30, over half had not been given the opportunity. I mean, in some cases, there were different situations. Some people were terrified, and they didn't offer that they had children. As one mother, actually a pregnant woman who was separated from her 2-month-old baby. And in her words, she said, "It's that they didn't ask me anything. They didn't talk to me, only to yell at me, to humiliate me. They never said, you have a daughter, you can bring her, because I would have brought my daughter. She is very attached to me." That was a 2-month-old daughter. And in this case, the mother was terrified, but the officials did not ask her, did not give her the opportunity to bring them. In other cases, we talked to one 27-year-old mother who was stopped. She was actually arrested at a traffic light. At that point, she was with 3 of her 6 children, and so they took the mother and her 3 children, and she kept trying to tell them, "I have 3 other children. I have 3 other children that have been left, with my sister," but they would not let her bring her 3 children.
We're speaking with.
I think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think we're about to have a commercial break, so I wanted to stop.
No, it's completely fine. Well, we'll definitely pick up the conversation with Dr. Michele Heisler on the other side of that break. So stay with us. Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Joining me today, South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez and Dr. Michele Heisler, the medical director for Physicians for Human Rights and a co-author of a new report, What About My Children? Family Separation Among Parents Deported to Honduras.
Dr. Heisler, the time you went to Honduras in November, the United States was making over 1,000 shuttle flights of deportees, shuffling them around, and that also included deportation flights a month, which is a phenomenal amount. Also understand from the report that the people who were being sent back, many of them had been in the United States long term. These were people who were really surprisingly, surprised by their apprehensions and arrests, and some of these took place, I understand, at courthouses, work, on the way to school. I mean, describe what you learned from these people.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, really everybody we spoke with, and I think almost all of the people that were being sent to Honduras then, as now, many of them were longtime residents of the U.S. We spoke with people that had been in the United States for 10, 15, 20 years. They were hardworking members of their communities. Their children, some of their children were U.S. citizens. But in many cases, even those children not born in the U.S. had been in the U.S. Their whole lives almost. They were engaged in school. Some of the children didn't speak a lot of Spanish and had never been to Honduras. So again, I think this is the nature of what we're seeing. Of course, none of the people we spoke with had criminal records. And in fact, the reception centers are informed if they're being sent to anyone that did have a criminal record. And no, none of the hundreds of people that were sent during the 5 to 7 days that we were in Honduras had a criminal record. So these are people that do not have criminal records. These are people who are integrated into their communities, and these are people that have lived in the U.S. for many years. I would say from the range of years that people had lived in the U.S. were from 2 to 25 years. So again, these are people, many of whom had no family left in Honduras. They weren't sure where they were going to go.
I think the report said 92% of those detained did not have a criminal record. I guess that would be for that month of November. So there would. Well,
actually, that is a term that the ICE detention records themselves, I mean, even the ICE statistics themselves are conceding that 92% of the people deported have no criminal record. And as you had noted, and as I'm sure some of your viewers are aware, a number of the people we spoke to were still in the middle of their asylum application. So again, a couple of people had been picked up when they were at the courthouse, doing what they were supposed to do, reporting, continuing the process of seeking asylum. And in the period that we were there, people were being deported really quickly. They were being picked up. They weren't being allowed to call their lawyers. They, again, as I said, in some cases, they were not able to contact their children. In one case, we spoke to a father whose wife had already been deported. So he was in the U.S. He had left his daughter, his about 3-year-old daughter, with the babysitter. And again, he was outside the house. The ICE officials came, they took him. He kept saying, my daughter's with a babysitter. I have to get my daughter. They did not allow him to retrieve his daughter. Finally, he was able to talk to the babysitter, and the babysitter ended up kindly keeping his daughter for 11 days.
I remember that part of the report. That was startling.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, as you noted earlier, ICE is not adhering to its own directives. So we are seeing forcible family separation. And again, as a physician, this is going to cause long-lasting psychological trauma. I mean, I can't even imagine the long-term psychological trauma. I mean, certainly of the parents, but as you can imagine, a child of 3, 4, 5, or 10 even, this kind of abrupt sense of abandonment, with no warning, having their primary caregiver, their parent, being taken away. I can't even begin to think of the post-traumatic stress syndrome, anxiety, depression, that these children are going to face, the long-term consequences. And again, many of the children are U.S. citizens, and it's going to be something that our healthcare system, mental health providers are going to be facing, the kind of trauma this is going to produce.
Now, the women and the fathers and the mothers that you spoke to, did they know where their children were, or were the children put into protective custody, or because they were minors, and did they have any contact for the majority of them?
Yeah. Well, some of them, again, I think as you noted before, people are being sent to different centers. So in many of the cases, they were picked up in Louisiana or Florida. A lot of them were sent to detention centers in Texas. And almost all of them were able to reach out from the detention center. Some of them weren't able to make a call in their own state. And again, because the ICE officials didn't even know whether they had children, they weren't, so the children were wherever they had been when the parent was detained. And so I would say in all the cases, the children, they were able to say, okay, they're with a friend, they're with a relative. In this one case, with a babysitter. But I think the issue now is that the parents are now in Honduras. And the hurdles now of trying to be reunited with their children are immense. Again, many of the parents had been returned to Honduras without their documents. They weren't able to bring money. And so now the parents are finding themselves in Honduras, in many cases desperate to try to bring their children to them in Honduras. But now how do they achieve that? And also desperate to make sure that the relative or friend that their children are with are able to care for the children.
I wanted to also note something that I noticed in the report. It said that many of the women, when they were deported, did not have bras or underwear because ICE seized their undergarments as potential weapons, and the men had their shoelaces removed. So when they were returned to Honduras, they were not wearing adequate clothing. I mean, they were literally stripped. And then there was also information that pregnant, lactating, and postpartum women were detained without adequate nutrition. And then one woman who had suffered what's called a missed miscarriage was actually deported with a dead fetus still inside her body, and she risked infection. Is that true?
Yeah, these were cases, again, we interviewed mothers returning, and we also interviewed physicians, psychologists, and others at the centers. And so those were cases that physicians had recently seen in the days and weeks before we were actually in person at the centers. And so the physicians had really some just horrific stories. Again, these stories focused on the pregnant women and what they experienced. There were 2 cases where pregnant women had not received medical care and immediately had to be hospitalized when they returned to Honduras. The physicians also told us of cases where the families were returned with children, but the children, had been in the middle of treatment for cancer. In one case, was undergoing a series of surgeries. Those parents had health insurance in the U.S., and now they've found themselves in Honduras, where they weren't sure where they could continue to get the health care that their children need. It's heartbreaking, and it's a level of cruelty that I think we found shocking.
We've been speaking with co-author of a new report, What About My Children? Family Separation Among Parents Deported to Honduras, and medical director for Physicians for Human Rights, Dr. Michele Heisler. Unfortunately, we are out of time today, but thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Heisler.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for your reporting.
Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. And welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. A man born in the United States is now the head of one of the most powerful cartels in Mexico. Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez, the stepson of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, otherwise known as El Mencho, is now the new leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, according to a report published by the Wall Street Journal. The Journal report says as soon as El Mencho was buried, his California-born stepson began his ascent to the throne of that cartel. He goes by many aliases, including El Triquitres, Pelon, O3, El Tres, and Palacas. El Mencho's own biological son couldn't take over because he's serving in prison in the United States. Valencia Gonzalez is 41 years old and a U.S. citizen. Before we go, we wanted to remind you to check out our partners at Political Power Ranker. It's a show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics, all based on data. This week, looking at national polls on Trump's approval ratings for potential 2028 Democratic Party presidential candidates, and opinions on the Iran war, among other things. So make sure to check it out. That's going to do it for us today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.